Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was trained by Danzo. Her face. I remember her face. A boy trained to kill is brought into the light. Gray, different Naruto heavily stealth-based and root trained, but not in the traditional sense. How will he cope with that most dangerous of foes, emotion? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 6, Fire and Ice. Just as morning was breaking, his half-sleep haze broke off, and he snapped to alert as a figure in a pink kimono entered the clearing. He raised the crossbow to his shoulder as the figure checked the meadow for something, a basket full of plants under their arm as they walked. They looked around the clearing and sighted the boy lying, now snoring gently in the clearing. The pruning knife they were carrying gently moved as the grip was altered. The knife was raised as the figure knelt next to the boy. The sharp twang of the crossbow going off resonated around the clearing. The figure was quick and blocked the bolt with the pruning knife, the force of the projecting ripping it clean out of their fingers. The next bolt was caught by a wall of ice. Come out or the genin dies. I don't want to kill him. Naruto dropped from the trees, loaded crossbow pointing dead at the ninja's face. Drop your weapon. Drop yours first. You are in no danger, as I said, I don't want to fight. Naruto lowered his bow very, very slowly. He distrusted the figure, a teenager by the looks of things. The pink dress and choker screamed girl, but that was irrelevant. They knew ice jutsu, which was unexpected. With the bow lowered to his side, the figure looked at him, eyes slightly narrowed on the pale face. You're the person who attacked me before. How did I not sense you? I'm good at hiding. You are. What's your name? You expect me to say? Not really now. I thought we could get along without killing each other. I don't like killing. Killing is my job. The silence was total. I wasn't going to kill him, you know. I'm just gathering herbs to use for healing. Surely even you recognize the sanctity of medic core. An enemy is an enemy. The look on the figure's face became harder and colder. I suggest you leave. He is waking up and I will kill him if you aren't gone back to the town before he fully wakes. I won't kill him if you leave and let us be. Naruto considered the option. He could kill the figure, a relatively powerful ninja compared to the genin they held hostage, but at the cost of the genin's life. He thought back to the situation with Hinata back in the debriefing. The Hokage's face of anger when he had threatened to harm another shinobi of Konoha had been so intense, so real. And now he was effectively pointing his bow at another boy. He had no choice. Fine. If you do kill him, I will end your life. Fine. Now go. He backed off and moved into the bushes at speed. About 10 steps in he doubled back and took up position at a different edge, bow out and aimed. He relaxed slightly when he saw that they were talking without any weapons drawn. It was odd. The enemy shinobi knew that the genin was an enemy, and yet was not killing them off. They had had the chance after all. They had a perfect opportunity. He struggled to see the logic behind the action and drew a blank. Every possibility he could see lead to a favorable outcome if he were in his foe's position, unless getting the herbs was so essential that they couldn't even risk fighting. But that didn't add up with the supposed injuries Zabuza had taken. He ran the scenarios through his head again to check if he'd missed anything. He hadn't. That made no sense. The situation didn't make any sense. Still, the figure was now gone. The team wouldn't be attacked for another few days at best, and well, they wouldn't exactly miss him if he were gone now, would they? Perfect chance to trail the figure. He waited till the genin had begun moving back towards the town, activated his Byakugan, and moved off in pursuit of the figure. They were quick. He was working fairly hard to keep up at a good speed, and he silently cursed that he might not be able to keep up. Although his reactions were quick, he was built to assassinate, not chase and fight up close. He forced himself to move onwards, knowing that this would allow him the chance to complete his secondary objective when the time was right. The figure wasn't expecting to be followed, and was taking a direct route towards the shoreline of the island nation. Naruto considered the fact that because Gato was blocking the shipping, it probably meant he had a base on the island. The dock warehouses came into view on the horizon, and Naruto smiled. Lots of shadows, lots of rooftops, tons of cover. He could really get to work here if he wanted to. And could get in. The wire fence around the perimeter would be a stubborn obstacle. The figure stopped running and pulled on the hunter-nin mask it had used before. It approached the compound's gates slowly and deliberately. The gates were opened, the figure walked in, and the gates were closed. Guards lined the towers, armed with bows and whatever equipment they used. They had every above-ground approach covered. Advancing in the day would be suicide. Naruto decided to sit and watch the compound until it was dark. The hours passed, as Naruto picked out guard routines and possible blind spots, trying to lip read when he had his Byakugan active. He kept it off mostly. After a while, it depleted too much chakra and caused him to get splitting headaches. He'd learned that the hard way after his first mission. The soft reds of the sunset began once again to appear on the horizon, and he stretched out his muscles. It was time to get to work. The days passed without note. The genin were training and seemed to have settled down a bit. Kakashi was back to full strength and ready to fight again. The nights though. He felt the sensation he had felt before when he had been given a mission before. Even if there was no kill yet, Gato kept himself wrapped in layers of security and constantly had several guards around him, penetrating each layer, working out how to break each different protocol, working out hiding spots, weaknesses, exploitable holes. It was something he could do forever. Learning the way the guards walked, their posture, their terrible misuse of language, their codes and slang. He was compiling a statistical list in his head of how to become one of these people. Learning phrases he could use in tight spots, or if questioned too hard. He found it fascinating, a study that would be tested every night when he infiltrated. He was sure that he had finally worked it out. There was about a 1-minute window. It wasn't going to be dignified. It wouldn't be clean. But it would work. The only other way would be to just be invited in. He slipped out under the cover of dark and took up a watch position over the gate. The sun was rising again, a hazy red glow on the horizon. That mean rain later? Some might consider. Then he saw the figures walking out of the gates. The attack was this morning. A knot of anticipation formed in his stomach. He had never seen how the average shinobi fought, especially high-power ones. This would be fascinating. Although the accomplice would be a threat to the genin. He set off back for the village, outpacing the two figures, which moved with a slowness that belied their mission. He leapt through the trees at speed, heading straight for the village. Sometimes outright speed was needed as opposed to stealth. Panting slightly, he barreled through the open upstairs window of the house just as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the window. Kakashi sat up quickly. Naruto didn't waste any time. They're coming. Kakashi nodded. I'll wake my team and make sure they're ready. I want you to guard the house with a clone just in case anyone tries anything sneaky. I suspect Gato may try something after Zabuza and want to be ready. The shadow clone was dispatched to the roof. How good are you in a scrap? In training I could hold my own against most sparring opponents, although against Zabuza's associate I may have difficulty. They are quicker than any opponent I have faced. Right. In which case pick your moment carefully and act as you see fit. I may not be your sensei, but I will say this. Those who abandon the mission are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are lower than trash. I expect you to step in to save my team when necessary, even if it means blowing your cover. Hi. We'll engage them at the bridge. Good luck. I will hold so the leaf may flourish. In the time it took for Kakashi to register those words, Naruto was heading out of the cover of the tree line near the bridge. He knew exactly where he was going to hide, having observed the bridge. It was good to plan ahead. He slipped into the hiding place he had prepared, and slid the crossbow into his hands. He felt once more the feeling he had felt on the way to the wave course through him in a sudden wave. It was good. It felt as though his nerves were being sparked into life with some new energy. He shifted to get rid of some of it, whatever it was mucking up his breathing. He performed a breathing exercise he had been taught when he had first shown aptitude for the bow. That had been 7 years ago. Lord Danzo had accompanied him to the armory to show Naruto all the weapons. He'd almost felt drawn to the weapon, and after being taught how to use it, had tried his first target exercise. He hit all the targets with the weapon, despite it being too big for him to really hold. Lord Danzo had brought over another one of his shinobi to help instruct Naruto, and for years he had worked with the man to improve his skills. 7 years on, and there was no shinobi as good with the weapon as Naruto. His gloved hands ran tenderly over the smooth wood. The same bow as all those years ago. He'd never needed another one. He'd taken care of it. After the Hokage had treated it roughly, knocking it from his hands across the mission room floor, he had had to re-varnish it and clean the mechanisms. It was his weapon, closer to a part of his anatomy than anything else. He looked down the sights and waited. It didn't take long for things to start happening. The mist began to creep, like a thin wispy hand from away to his left, where the shipyard was. It crept around trees and engulfed bushes in its wake. Blinded by the mist, Naruto shut his eyes and listened. The foxhole he had dug in preparation had been entirely passed over by the mist. It was big enough for him, roughly dug out of the dirt. The mist muffled the sound slightly, but he could hear the pre-battle conversation. That was something he would have to get used to. Why talk before the fight? What was the point? Soon afterwards, the sounds of combat began shortly afterwards. Naruto prepared himself for what could be his first direct engagement with an enemy shinobi. He found himself having to slow his breathing, the sensation of his limbs electrifying once more flooding through him as he prepared to move out. Once the enemies were entrenched in combat, he could intervene more easily. He found his hands itching to take hold of his weaponry, to get in and fight his foes whilst being able to see them in the eye. He squashed the thoughts. That was not his role. That would be like trying to use a vial of poison as a club. It would get broken and its contents wasted. No, his was the subtle role. His was the sharpened blade in the night. His was the genjutsu and the hidden strike. His was a role without glory, without honor. His was the task of getting the job done no matter the cost. He calmed himself and let his mind take over the situation. From the sound of it, Kakashi had left the protection of the builder and the associate to his Jinin squad whilst he fought Zabuza. It was a good plan. Getting involved in Kakashi's fight would be purposeless. The associate, on the other hand. He forced down the feeling that he needed to make that kill. After all, they were the first to ever survive when he had intended to kill someone, and had also been able to force his hand in a later meeting. Letting them live a third time would not be right. He moved from the bolt hole at speed, moving through the mist to the Genin's fight. The chakra mist still had his Byakugan blind, but he could tell. The huge dome loomed into view before his eyes as he got closer, cloak whipping in the breeze as he ran. He caught the kunai that was thrown at him, and pulled down the hood as he turned to his aggressor. Leaf. What is that dome? The pink-haired girl gawked at him. Who are you? Does it matter? What is in the dome? He studied it more closely. It was laced heavily with chakra, and seemed to glow like a pale blue-white sun before his Byakugan, completely overshadowing the mist. Sasuke-kun and the Baka are in the dome. He just jumped in before it closed up. The person in there is trying to kill them. Keep guarding the client. Despite the danger, Tazuna still was annoyed. I have a name, brat. How old are you? Who are you even? I don't care at the moment in time. None of your business. I am a ghost. The last few words came out of nowhere. But they worked. He inspected the dome. There were gaps between the giant hexagonal panels that made up the dome. He ran his hand over one of them, and wasn't too surprised to find it was made of ice. Definitely the associate. He tried to look through one of the gaps in the dome. The mist inside was thinner, but still clogged with chakra. He could vaguely make out the shapes of the two genin trying to ward off attacks fired in at them from all directions. He analyzed. The dome let people in and didn't stop them from entering. Judging by the Sinbon needles sticking out of both genin inside, escape was made impossible by the associate. The mirrors were hard to destroy, being encased in ice, and the associate could travel between them at will. It was a very good attack strategy. Aside from the giant, obvious, showy dome bit, it would be something he could use if he had the jutsu and bloodline. A mirror set up to escape to, and a mirror to escape through once the job was done. Leaving only water as a trace. Ways to stop it. He watched the associate appear in the mirror opposite his position, and then throw a few needles at the besieged genin, who tried to deflect them back to back. The Uchiha was having a better time of it, and Naruto was intrigued to see that his eyes now had the Sharingan. Even so, the associate was wearing them down. Both were panting badly, their injuries starting to get to them. He had to act fast, even if it meant a more drawn-out battle. He dove through the gap he was next to and into the dome. The genin saw him enter, deflecting the path of another wave of Sinbon with his cloak, using it as a shield. The dark gray cloth was ripped by the needles, but it did enough to stop the light projectiles from doing damage. The brown-haired one just stared at him, and only just got to his senses in time to mostly avoid a wave of Sinbon. Who are? Shut up and focus. I can sense where he is coming from before he reaches the mirror. Just block until I can get him. How are you going to do T? Shut up and block. But Naruto didn't bother giving an answer, using a kunai to stop the needles of ice the associate was using. The small residue chakra from the shaping let him see them more clearly. He had a plan. He actually had several plans, each ready for the next step this foe took. He swung round ready to fire his bow one-handed, but the brown-haired genin was in the way. This, he suspected, was something he might have to get used to. Teammates getting in the way. The Uchiha blocked most of another wave of Sinbon, taking one to the shoulder. Dobe, this guy will kill you if you don't speed up. Which one team? Either. The associate had paused in their attacks, and was circling them in the mirrors, wary of the crossbow. Naruto kept the Byakugan tracking the position in the mirrors. Less of a figure, more a mass of chakra that leapt from mirror to mirror, making it brighter than the others. He moved his hands in a series of signs out of sight of the other two genin. The less they knew about this the better. He held the final sign as he mentally crafted the genjutsu, and held it back until the right moment. The associate sat in one place too long. He sent the genjutsu into the mirror and waited to see if it had worked. Hopefully they can't dispel the jutsu without ending their own jutsu. Why has he stopped attacking? Shut up. Must you always question? The Sinbon came at them again, the brown-haired genin taking another to the leg. Before he cried out in pain, Naruto stuffed the hem of his cloak into the boy's mouth. He leaned right down next to his ear and whispered as quietly as he could. Right now, the only way we can be tracked is by noise. So don't make any. Try and sneak out whilst you can. The brown-haired genin got the message, and moved as quietly as they could towards the edge of the dome. Naruto watched through the thin inner mist to see the figure's response. Blinded by the genjutsu flooding the interior of the dome with shadowy darkness and unable to dispel it, the figure was hunting by sound. Given their mentor, it was something they were likely to be proficient at. The brown-haired figure was a few inches from a gap when they stepped on a twig. The nearest dome flared with chakra, and Naruto fired a bolt straight for it. The associate threw the Sinbon point blank into the genin, peppering him with needles. But they couldn't sense the bolt until they felt it impact. by which point, it was far too late. The steel bolt slammed into and cracked the mask, before puncturing the associate's face between the eyes. Blood ran from the wound as they fell to the ground, the ice mirrors melting swiftly as the jutsu ended. Naruto ran over to the brown-haired genin to check his injuries. He was alive, but the last salvo had hurt him badly. He turned to the pink-haired girl. "You down here. Treat him. Now." "But Sasuke-kun is more alive than your other teammate. Now." He didn't bother checking as he moved towards the sounds of Kakashi's fight. It came into view just as Kakashi ended it. The wet sizzling sound of a lightning-charged hand being withdrawn from a chest could be heard before Zabuza hit the ground. Kakashi wiped his hand absent-mindedly on his pants, as if he were cleaning something off them. The lightning-based jutsu meant that no such entrails existed, but he did it anyway. He assessed where he was physically. He was alive, a couple of cuts, but nothing too bad. He was also badly exhausted. Only fighting Zabuza beforehand had allowed him last this long. If anyone else showed up he would be in trouble. The mist began to clear as the jutsu began to fade, and his heart sank as figures began entering his view from the bridge. He looked round for his team. Sakura was trying to get some life out of the two boys, and Tazuna was staring at the bridge with a grim expression on his face. Naruto was nowhere to be seen. "Tazuna, to me. Looks like I'm the only one that can protect you now." The older man moved in behind him. "How are you holding up?" "Well enough." "Well, enough to face down 200 thugs?" Kakashi grimaced. The odds were heavily against him, and he was very much alone. Then he heard the mocking clap. At the back of the crowd, on a raised platform that was being rolled slowly forwards so his short stature could be seen over his hired hands, Gato slapped pudgy hands together slowly and mockingly. "Well done. You rid me of all my pay obstacles, and leave me with an easy victory. Now, I am not without leniency. I am a gracious man." His hired goons chuckled. Kakashi found himself nauseous at the situation. "Kill the bridge builder for me, and I let you and your team live. I have no quarrel with Konoha, so I offer you the chance to live." "Never. I tried." "Lads, feel free to mete out whatever justice you feel like, to anyone you meet for the next few hours." Dark laughter erupted from the goons. Kakashi readied himself for a final push, readying tired and cramping limbs for one final push. He was fairly sure that if he was able to take out a good 20 of them quickly, the rest would be a little too cautious, letting him take the advantage. Then Tazuna died. Haku had somehow come out of nowhere and sunk a senbon needle into his neck. There was blood and Tazuna was very, very still. Haku rose and walked towards the stunned crowd of mercenaries. "Do not worry yourself with this fight, Konoha-san, your mission has failed. The leaf wilts in autumn. Gato-sama, it appears my master fell during the fighting. I have nowhere to go for the moment, so is it possible we might retire to the hideout to celebrate our victory? With the builder dead it will be easy to maintain subjugation of wave." Gato stroked his chin in mock contemplation. "Yes, Haku, we shall go back and celebrate your victory. I also have payment to give you, of course." The party of thugs departed to the boats and began to return to the shipping yards of their hideout. Kakashi dropped to one knee in exhaustion before checking on Tazuna. He reached a pair of fingers down to his neck and removed the senbon needle. Then he checked his pulse. It was there. Weak, but there. The older man groaned. "What just happened?" "I'll explain when everyone is safe. Right now, I suspect Gato is in more trouble than he thinks." Chapter 7, A Feast of Problems. Naruto concentrated. He was lucky that the associate, Haku, Gato had called him, was supposed to be in mourning. It made the fact he didn't have to talk much easier. Hinged into his form, he did talk with Haku's voice. It was difficult wearing someone else's voice though. The words still formed the same but sounded wrong. He was also glad for the mask, something he'd quickly stripped from the corpse when he'd realized the situation. The fact it was cracked from his shot seemed to add to the authenticity of his fight. He could add exhaustion to the list of reasons he wouldn't be talking much. So, he found himself sitting in one of the warehouses that had been turned into a dirty makeshift banqueting hall surrounded by lowlife thugs. Next to him was the suited Gato, hands clasped on a fine goblet which he drank heavily from. The victory celebration was going on long into the night. Sake and other strange drinks had been produced by the barrel by Gato, to raucous cheers to his hired thugs. Then a great quantity of roasted meats had appeared. As the drink flowed and food was consumed, the common thugs were entertained by a variety of ladies wearing a bare minimum of clothing. Naruto didn't fully understand what was going on and waited. He was improvising. Before he would have gone in quietly and killed the man off in his sleep, but he'd been forced to improvise. He'd never had to do that before. He looked down at his plate, the food barely touched, and tried to concentrate. A greasy hand took his in what he assumed was meant to be a comforting way. Haku, Zabuza was a fine man. It must have been hard losing him. He was my master, without him I feel purposeless. The hand patted his own again. It was like being engulfed in grease. He felt somewhat sick. The man's breath was horrendous, and he dared not look to see the man's face. You're fully welcome to stay with my company until you know what to do. You're useful, a real killer like your master was. Come, I wish to discuss my proposals further away from my men. Needless to say, they'd be jealous if they heard the offer I was going to make. He allowed his hand to be taken as Gato led him from the room and out towards his quarters. A couple of brutes with huge weapons parted to let him through, sharing a dark chuckle. Naruto found himself alone with the vile man. He could unhinge now and just be done with it, but timing was everything. Gato lit a cigar and blew a huge cloud of smoke into the air. The lighting was dimmer than he expected for the gangster's quarters. Then he realized a potential reason. The thought sickened him as the man walked slowly round him, like a shark circling its prey. You know, Zabuza protected you more than you know. He treated you like a child, like a father might protect his daughter. Naruto tried to hold himself together. He could feel his hand twitching, wanting to become himself again and kill the man before him. He felt hatred welling up. He had never felt anything like it before. Sometimes he felt a mild annoyance when people were stupid and did stupid things. This felt entirely different. If the annoyance was like a buzzing that didn't go away, then this was an inferno that seared inside him. It must have been a lonely life for such a sweet young girl as yourself. Perhaps you would like me to comfort you on this dark night? His hands crept round his shoulders and tried to give a reassuring massage. It felt like being clamped by a pair of fat claws. He felt the hand descend down his chest. He knew he had to wait as long as possible before killing the man. Don't worry, I can be like a father to you, I'll take care of you. Stay with me tonight and I can make it all feel better. The hand kept descending as the other tried to undo the clothing at the back. He felt the man's hideous breath on his neck. That tore it. In the space of half a second Naruto unhinged, drew the tanto from his back, and slashed Gato's throat out. Gato didn't even have time to look surprised before the blood loss and shock killed him, and he fell to the floor. Naruto felt the edges of his cloak get slightly wet in the blood from the floor as he planned his next move. Simply killing Gato wouldn't be enough right now, security would still be tight. There was no way out other than the front door. Oh well, more of this improvising stuff. He shoved Gato's corpse under the bed and rolled the expensive, but now ruined carpet around him as he did so. That hid most of the evidence. Then he hinged again, taking on the form of Gato. He thumped a table, and then overturned it into a filing cabinet, causing it to clatter to the ground before he cursed filthily. The guards outside his quarters burst in, weapons drawn. What's wrong, boss? The girl. Did you stop the fucking girl? What girl? Naruto fought the man's vocal cords into a roar. The one that just escaped me. She addled my head with a ninja trick then ran out. Did you two idiots not see her? What the hell do I pay you for? Find her and bring her to me. The guards were not paid to think and headed off into the compound for the missing Haku. He dehenged again and pulled the carpet-rolled corpse from under the bed and put it back roughly where it had been. Taking an ugly, brutish weapon that he kept in the room, he blooded it in Gato's neck then left it next to the body. He ghosted out of the room and henged again. In the form of one of the guards, he ran as best he could towards the banquet hall. It was difficult to run in a form you were unused to, and the guard was nearly twice his height and at least 3 times his weight. He wondered how people this size coped with having no subtlety briefly as he prepared his shout. He burst through the doors as loudly as he could and fell onto a table, sending it crashing to the ground, food and drink flying everywhere. He rose, the commotion caused making him the center of attention. He fought off the feeling he had been somehow discovered to use the fact he had everyone's attention. Someone's killed the boss. We went off chasing the stupid girl and someone killed him. There was commotion. Men who before had been dancing and singing as comrades eyed one another suspiciously. It didn't take long for accusations to start flying between the men. It took not much longer after that for the first punch to be thrown, and then weapons were drawn. The entertaining girls screamed as a bloodthirsty melee began. Fueled by tensions between the hired thugs and the liberal amounts of alcohol they had imbibed, the fight escalated to contain the whole compound. After all, some of them had realized that with the boss dead, the quickest way to make money would be to grab lots and run. Of course, by that time, Naruto had unhinged again and was making his way out of the compound. He kept to the shadows of the crates, watching the fighting spread throughout the compound. Some of the men were quietly looting buildings and trying to escape, whilst other men went around trying to restore order. Then there were the few who just wanted to see the world run red with blood. Naruto slipped out under the fence surrounding the compound and made his way back up to the rise he had used to scope out the compound in the first place. The angry shouts and commotion could be heard from the compound, and someone had started a fire in one of the warehouses. That was regrettable, but he had been improvising. He took stock. He had made one direct kill in the heat of the moment, and crippled the strength of the thugs indirectly. Gato was dead. Overall, successful. He suspected Kakashi would be less pleased. He regathered his thoughts as he moved through the trees. The anger had been new, except it felt more intense than that. Then there was another feeling. The happiness, that was the word he had used to describe completing a mission was there, but it felt different. It was better, it was as if something about his earlier feelings had been sated. It felt right. He relived the kill moment, working out if it could have been done better. He found himself getting a rough feeling, like the roar of a great beast when the blade turned the man's throat to paste and kept going. A sense of rightness when he saw the pathetic corpse his blow had left. It felt, He needed new words for this. Or someone to talk to about these emotions he was feeling. Kakashi left Sakura looking after her sleeping teammates. Both would live, that much was certain. Both would definitely be sore for a few days. He walked through Tazuna's house, past the room where Tazuna himself was just about sitting up. Naruto's needle had been pretty superfluous, but a neck wound was a neck wound. The subtle knockout blow had genuinely concussed the man. That had been a bit overboard, but then again, Naruto had been improvising. Probably. At least he hoped so because having that as a plan was frankly insane. He himself was walking fine, the cuts from his fight with Zabuza more or less healed. He drew out his book and walked out of the house, heading for the shoreline. He glances briefly at where the bridge building team was working. Progress was going well, the bridge would soon be finished. There was a thin pall of smoke on the horizon too. He sat at the lakeside near the tree line, where the battle had taken place. He heard the ruffling of a cloak behind him. "You're back. Is Gato dead?" "Yes." You do realize you broke your mission protocol, right? What if a bandit or two had managed to sneak up on Tazuna or my team whilst you were distracted? It wouldn't have been logical for them to have. Plus, I stopped the town being destroyed and the builder being killed. You nearly killed him. If I wanted to kill him, I would have killed him. Well, yes, that's what you do. You did well, although a little more warning next time would be appreciated. I'm not used to working with others. They're sloppy and get in the way. Kakashi sighed. This was something he'd been worried about. Sakura has no idea what happened in the dome. All I know is you went in, killed Haku and left Sasuke and alive. The other one made a mistake whilst escaping. I think you used him as a distraction. That doesn't sit well with me. I wanted him to escape. When he made the mistake, I capitalized. Kakashi found himself wanting to raise his voice. He realized that would probably be a bad idea. Naruto's voice hadn't changed at all. It was still flat and emotionless. We'll see. You know Sakura isn't entirely sure you actually exist. You didn't identify yourself more than your headband. Neither do ANBU. Knowledge is power. You're not ANBU, you're a 13-year-old shinobi of Konoha. There was a brief silence. How did you kill Gato? I assume you used your disguise as Haku to get inside the base? It wasn't my original plan, but yes. I had to hold the henge for a few hours. Kakashi whistled under his breath. Good control, not just the henge, most ninja can do that for a long time. The acting. For someone with no understanding of humanity, you know how to mimic people well. It was fortunate that the associate was a reserved character. Haku, you mean? Yes, I refer to her mentally as the associate. You don't like names, do you? They have some use, but never understood why we need them. Numbering would be more efficient. It's to do with personality and being human. I thought being human had to do with our DNA. It's more than that. How? Difficult to explain. So, you can't prove your point? It's like proving the wind. That's easy. Look, it's true and just leave it at that. That's illogical. Deal with it. We're off topic. You killed him without implicating Konoha, which is good. Naruto processed that for later. Am I required further for the mission? How depleted would you say Gato's forces are? Well, Gato is dead, and a mass brawl broke out after I broke the news. I saw at least a dozen dead, several dozen more fighting and quite a bit of looting. I'd say they're either dead, dying or running off with the money. A small number might remain, but nothing significant. Then you're probably done here. That said, as your superior, I'm going to pull rank and keep you here. What mission do you have for me? No mission. I just want you to rest, relax, and possibly have a full night's sleep. I can see your face, even if it is hidden in shadows. You haven't slept properly for at least a week, maybe more. Maybe you never have. You also smell of blood and dirt. Also, I'd like you to talk to my team. What kind of mission is that? Well, it's partly to get you talking to people in a non-mission context some more, and partly so they get some idea that someone their own age is a better ninja than them by some distance. I doubt I could beat any of them in a straight spar. Give it a go. One last thing. I showed you my face, which is something not many have seen. Consider that a sign of my trust. I would like to see your stomach. Naruto paused. That was definitely classed as something he didn't trust people with the knowledge of. That was also something he hadn't expected the man to know. He briefly recalled the hazy days of his young childhood, of the looks the orphanage owners had given him. Some muttered words too. Then slightly older, being talked to by someone who seemed to know him inside out despite being a stranger to him. Lord Danzo, he had no idea who he was then. Then the procedures. The pain. He realized he had been silent for a minute. Well, a sign of trust? A sign that you and I understand each other on a deeper level, that we are in some way alike? That I can expect you to never betray me? That's what trust is. By the way, that's the longest non-mission related sentence I've ever heard you speak. Naruto unfastened the cloak and pulled up the tight black shirt he wore underneath. Kakashi's eye took in all the details of the seal. It looked like... Are there two seals? Yes. I see. The outer one looks particularly formidable. It is. I won't ask more. Naruto had the shirt over his chest and cloak around him quickly. Right, go and complete your mission. Preferably the bath first. Seriously. You smell horrific. Hi. And Naruto had moved off into the trees, a black moving figure on the grass, and then gone into the trees. Kakashi returned his attention to his book, enjoying the feel of the sun. Sakura sat watching over her teammates. Well, one of them at least. She was staring at Sasuke's face, seemingly a bit lost in his face. The room darkened for a moment, and she looked towards the door. It hadn't moved. Then the window. It was open, but she didn't think it had. Then she threw a glance over her shoulder and screamed for the few moments it took for Naruto's gloved hands to slap her in the face. SHH. They're sleeping. She swung a fist at the sudden black-cloaked intruder, which he caught. I'm the shinobi from the fight. He didn't entirely understand the look on her face, and acted quickly to catch the other fist that swung at him. Stop it, why are you attacking me? Sakura did her best not to shout and failed pretty badly. You slapped me. You were going to wake them. They need rest. He neatly trapped the leg Sakura tried to kick him with and locked it with one of his own. The combination of arm locks and the leg entrapment brought them close. Naruto took in the experience. It was uncomfortable, and she smelled too nice. Let me go. When you stop trying to hurt me. This is the second time I've met you, and you've tried to kill me both times. Is this how I'm meant to greet people my age? What? No. Just, let go of me. He relinquished the holds and backed off. She rubbed her limbs where the holds had hurt her. There was a silence as she looked him over. Still in the same combination of blacks and grays as the same night, he looked kinda shabby in the light. Shabby but tense though. She gave up trying to see the majority of his face under the hood, and used all her senses. Primarily smell. Why do you smell of dirt and blood? Killed someone after lying on the ground. Didn't you wash your clothes? Try on a new set? Didn't bring a spare. I did try washing. What? Didn't bring a spare, but I did try washing. Sakura just stared at him in a mix of horror and wonderment. Can I see your face? Yes. Well, show me then. He dropped the hood. She recoiled slightly. What shampoo do you use? What's shampoo? What? She said that loudly enough that his ears rang a little. SHHH, no shouting. Sorry, what are you? Human. Are you related to Kakashi-sensei? No. But the eye patch? I lost an eye. How? Training. She shivered. He was just not right. There was more silence. Naruto decided that he would try starting the conversation. So, what's your favorite form of training? She looked at him as if he had suggested unimaginable horror. None, I like spending time with Sasuke-kun. He's so perfect, and he's going to be a great ninja and be the best, and he's so much better than everyone else, especially the other baka. What do you like about Sasuke? He's so perfect and dreamy and handsome and strong and awesome and... Naruto zoned out. His mind was recoiling in horror at what was happening. Words he had never heard before went into his mind, which for once struggled to try and catalog them all. He realized he hadn't been listening at all. Why? He just is. Don't be like the Baka. Baka trains harder than you. Only because he was the dead last. The dead last? But he's alive. She rolled her eyes. The worst in our graduation class. The most useless. There was a groan from the direction of the sleeping mats. The brown-haired genin had opened his eyes slightly and tilted his head in their direction. Sakura-chan. Quieter, please. She looked slightly embarrassed. The brown-haired boy looked towards Naruto. You? Yes. Me. Did you kill Haku? Yes. He nearly killed you. Couldn't you have just disabled Haku? Yes, but he was an enemy and a threat. You didn't need to kill him. Killing is my job. You didn't need to. The boy tried to rise, but his injuries quickly caught up with him. He gave a grunt of pain before he lay back down. Silly Baka, don't strain yourself. Tsunami will shout at you if you rip your bandages again. But Sakura-chan, I have to train. Naruto observed the exchange. Baka seemed to be trying to get on her good side, whilst she showed no such restraint. From his perspective, she seemed dominant and was giving him a telling off. It was like watching one of his old instructors deliver a punishment to a failed exercise, only without the immense physical pain. But there was something different again. Like it didn't matter for some reason, and was actually positive. Other people were illogical. There was another groan as Sakura's voice rose a bit too far. Dobe, Sakura, shut up. Sasuke-kun. Sakura hugged his prone form, and even Naruto could tell he was unhappy about this. He grunted, pushing her away. The grunt was very obviously from pain, but she seemed to think it was impressive, and cooed over him. Naruto looked over at the brown-haired one, who looked at him with an odd expression on his face, before making an odd gesture by poking his finger into his mouth and retching. Naruto just about understood the gesture. It lacked all the subtlety and grace of the root sign language, even if there was not specific code for that makes me want to vomit. It was rough and crude, and understandable. Are you okay? Just fine. The way he said it was different, but if he said he was fine by Naruto's guess. Realizing there wasn't much more for him to do there, he disappeared through the window. The brown-haired genin coughed loudly to get the attention of his talkative and silent teammates. Sakura-chan, who is that guy? She thought for a moment. I don't know his name. He said he was a ghost when I first met him. You mean you just talked to him and didn't even ask his name? Sakura readied her fist for a much easier strike when Sasuke made another dismissive grunt. Her attention diverted, her target was able to drift back to sleep. Chapter 8, Debrief. Team 7 re-entered the village after the trek back from the wave country. The clouds sat heavy and gray in the sky, the air heavy and thick with the promise of rain to come. Kakashi lazily dismissed the team as he headed off to debrief the mission. As he wandered off towards the tower, his team decided what to do. Sakura decided that now was as good a time as any. Sasuke-kun, do you want to get something to eat? Not really. I'm going home. Want me to come with you? You live in the other direction, don't bother. Oh, okay. She looked around for her other teammate, whom she had no doubt had been building for his own attempt at asking her for the same. She was surprised to see that he had gone entirely. It was dark by the time Kakashi was going through the final debriefing steps in the Hokage's office. The clouds from earlier had thickened and burst, and the rain fell freely onto the town below. Fat drops splashed off concrete and wood, soaking into the ground, turning dirt into thick muddy paste. Civilians scurried in the dark, moving quickly from cover to cover as they carried out whatever errands they had to do. Kakashi looked out as the Hokage read his report. He envied the people sometimes. Easier lives, less risk of death, all the time in the world to enjoy books. The report was fairly standard, as far as C-rank missions that got bumped up to A rank went. Kakashi was a ninja of A rank, possibly verging on S rank in the books. He was capable of completing such missions on his own. His report was entirely from his perspective, excluding a small paragraph at the bottom of the page about the performance of his team. So Kakashi, and I quote, "Team performed adequately in combat, subduing a ninja of superior skill by use of tactics and persistence." Interesting way of putting it. It would be remiss of me not to question further the role of your team. I might just use this opportunity to ask about their progress. Kakashi sighed. This was the bit he hadn't been looking forward to. This was the bit where he had to actually think about things. What kind of ninja did they subdue? Who subdued them? How? What jutsu were they able to employ? In the initial engagement, they acted together to get me out of a water prison jutsu at short notice, evading Zabuza before killing his water clone. During the second engagement, I didn't see the fight due to my preoccupation with a swordsman of the mist. From my knowledge of the assailant, they were quick and used ice release jutsu. I thought the entire clan was dead. They weren't. They might be now. Regardless, surely you got a report from the team? I did. Sakura was forthcoming with her version of the battle. And? She guarded the bridge builder against all threats admirably whilst her teammates engaged the enemy. Her vision of the battle was obscured, but she saw the outcome, which I noted down in the report. Indeed. Your other genin? Were too wounded after the battle to give me their account. I never got round to it, the right moment never came up. I had to help rescue an old lady from. I see. Unfortunate. It is. I think that concludes the debrief. The team is doing well. Kakashi got up and made his way towards the door. The Hokage put down his pipe, tipping the ash into the tray on his desk before he looked back at Kakashi. It does, except for one more matter. Which is? The fact that I have another report about this mission still to go through. With Naruto. And since he heard your report, it's only fair that you hear his, don't you think? Kakashi shut the door and sat back down. Hiruzen examined him. He looked tired. He looked out of it. Come out, Naruto, I know you're in the curtains. He duly detached himself from the shadows of the fabric and came to stand in front of the desk. The Hokage motioned to the second chair in his office. Sit down, Naruto. May I stand? Yes, but you'd probably be more comfortable if you Saturday. He remained standing, a dark shadow in a room that the Hokage suddenly noticed was quite dark. He reached for the light switch under his desk, a useful bit of installation he kept ready if he wished to turn it off without getting up. It did not function as intended. Naruto, did you break the ceiling light? Yes. I don't like bright lights when it's night. You really shouldn't do that. Apologies. Anyway, you are both frustrating. One of you for your laziness, the other for his sheer lack of appreciation for normal human boundaries and etiquette. Naruto, do you have a written report? No. The Hokage relit his pipe. It was going to be a long night. He reached into the small hidden drawer that contained a much stronger breed of tobacco that he knew was bad for him. But it was going to be necessary. He lit it and enjoyed the hit of the stronger flavor before blowing smoke. It wasn't like he was going to live forever anyway. You do know a written report is required. Given I am off the records and without rank, it would not fit into the filing system. I do not wish to appear beyond the absolute necessity. Tough. Your previous employment may not have required it, but I do. Write it for me as soon as possible, please. In the meantime, give it verbally, and since I know most of what happened, I'll ask you directly. What activities did you undergo during the mission from your arrival? Naruto couldn't be seen to move, but noise came out from under the hood. With only the light from his desk, the Hokage couldn't even see his chin under the hood to give indication of talking. He definitely needed more. more lights as backup. It was a little unnerving when you could see nothing but darkness under the hood. I arrived and was given a briefing by Kakashi Taicho. Taicho? He was effectively captain of multiple squads for this mission. Fair enough. Continue. I was given orders to protect the bridge builder and the team, and otherwise infiltrate Gato's base as a secondary objective if I could. Hiruzen turned to Kakashi. You ordered him to take out Gato? You do realize that his company, though doubtless corrupt, had a strong share in Konoha's merchant quarter? If that share falls into the wrong hands, Konoha could be crippled economically, even if most of our income is derived from missions and shinobi work. I thought it might help our mission. If anything, I didn't expect him to be able to. Okay. What happened next? From the time between arrival and the fight, I either protected the team or scouted Gato's base. On one occasion I encountered Zabuza's associate Haku, whom I was unable to prevent from gathering medical supplies due to one of his team being held hostage in his sleep. Hiruzen didn't even look surprised when he turned to Kakashi. How does that even happen? He doesn't get on well with Sasuke to start with, and the conversation at one stage ran over a sensitive topic of conversation that set him off. He left and ran out into the forest, returning the next morning. You didn't talk to him? He seemed okay. Alright, continue Naruto. He had trained vigorously, excessively actually. Then slept through exhaustion. He survived the encounter. Haku's behavior was odd. How? He didn't kill him in his sleep instantly like I would have. Oh. Continue? After that incident, I worked out Gato's compound and had formulated a plan to kill him. However, the attack happened before I could enact it. I brought warning to Kakashi, allowing him to intercept and engage Zabuza alone whilst his genin attempted to take on Haku. Attempted? Haku used an imprisoning dome of ice mirrors which he could shift between quickly, along with Senbon to attack the two genin. Interesting, how were they doing before you arrived? The Uchiha had awakened his Sharingan, and was faring better, but both of them were not coping well with the situation. Neither of them had a plan to attack and were defending but taking damage. I estimate they had another 5 minutes at best before they were disabled. Your assessment then? Either Kakashi kills Zabuza and then protects the builder from Haku, or Haku wins first and the genin and bridge builder dies. The third genin, Sakura, yes? She could have stalled Haku for enough time for Kakashi to deal with Zabuza? No. She would have died without striking a blow. A bleak assessment. I only make assessments I think are accurate. Hiruzen saw Kakashi shrink a little further back into his chair, a pain sigh escaping him. Okay, so you intervened? Yes, I entered the dome and applied a genjutsu to Haku. I believed that he could not remove the genjutsu without disrupting his own technique. That's a significant gamble, Naruto. It was the quickest option I could use. I had backup plans to use, but they were less favorable. Your genjutsu? A variant of my shadow-enhancing technique. I flooded the dome with shadow to his mind such that he was blinded. After quieting the genin, I considered my options. I believed that the genin were too injured to continue fighting, so asked the more injured one to evacuate through gaps between the ice mirrors. Unfortunately, he made noise next to the mirror, and Haku moved to attack him directly. I predicted his attack and shot him as he appeared from the mirror. Unfortunately, his attack was completed, and the genin took a direct salvo of 10 Senbon. However, he survived and Haku was dead. Kakashi coughed. You wish to interject, Kakashi? I'm finding Naruto's account quite informative as to the combat that took place. A bit less technical than your fight, but compelling. I wish to suggest that Naruto isn't telling his part correctly. That got a raised eyebrow. I suggest that Naruto used him as bait. That is actually quite a serious accusation. Did you use him as bait, Naruto? I did not. I wanted him and the other to escape such that I could engage Haku better alone. I don't work well with others. But you know how others might react to situations? Mostly. Other people sometimes make mistakes, but usually are predictable. But you refute using him as bait? Yes. Well, Kakashi, he denies your accusation. Why do you make such an assertion? Kakashi didn't flinch from the tone of voice. Gut feeling. It just seems like expecting an injured genin to stealth his way out is a poor play I wouldn't expect Naruto to call. Very clever, Kakashi, cloaking your criticism with a compliment as you might for any other person, but you mistake Naruto for someone who'll pick that up. Naruto continued not to show any signs. I made the right call. Admit that you used him as bait. Admit you made the mistake, even if it did end up working out. I did not use him as bait. The Hokage held up a hand. Regardless, let's put that aside for now. Now Naruto, Kakashi's report states you then nearly killed the client and infiltrated Gato's base. I'd like to hear about that. After finishing my fight, I moved to assist Kakashi, but he finished his fight just as I got there. Gato arrived with at least 100 men. Kakashi was tired, his genin were not combat ready, and the client was vulnerable. I worked out a possible plan, given that Gato was unaware that Haku was dead, and enacted it without delay. That plan being to assault the client, nearly kill him and distract Gato? It was also to prevent further combat, which heavily favored our enemies. Instead, I balanced the risks against the potential rewards for my various possible actions, and enacted the most favorable outcome. That's remarkably clear thinking for someone of your age and experience, especially with the given threat. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Kakashi merely shrugged. Now, when you infiltrated Gato's compound, I sat through their victory feast, before Gato invited me back into his private chambers. I believe he thought Haku was a girl, and started trying to undress me. He what? Tried to undress me, I believe with a view towards reproductive actions taking place. There was silence. Kakashi broke it, his voice little more than a growl. Bastard. Agreed, Kakashi, such men should not be allowed to live. Then again, should we have expected anything more? What happened next? Once he had committed too far to the action, I unhinged and killed him with a blow to the throat using my tanto. It felt right, in a strange way. Strange how? Like I was invulnerable. I know that feeling well, Naruto. Kakashi nodded in agreement. But it still ends up feeling hollow after a while, doesn't it, Hokage-sama? Usually. Naruto took in what the older men were saying. He did slightly understand, but he was debriefing. Now was not the time to consider such things. I then used the idea that someone had killed Gato to spread chaos in the camp using another two hinged forms. When I left, the compound was in chaos. I then returned to the village to report to Kakashi-sensei. The Hokage reloaded his pipe with another thick wad of the strong stuff. So overall, you nearly got a teammate killed and nearly killed the client, and used a risky, and I assume improvised series of events to complete your objectives. You also caused collateral damage to the shipyards, killed a prominent businessman, and caused nearly 200 hired bandits to start a civil war in their camp. That is one way of putting it. I did what was necessary to complete the mission. The Hokage struggled to find the right words. Naruto had completed the mission in a totally unorthodox manner, probably stepping over lines he would never have his regular forces think of crossing, but he had been successful. So, Danzo, this is how you have trained him. Complete the mission at all costs as well as possible. In the end, he decided a chat with the wily bastard was in order, well, more in order than before. Well, you completed the mission, and have likely rid of the world of a man who could later have been an issue. A couple more questions though. What did you make of the genin on the team? Have they advanced since the test you observed in your first mission? The Uchiha is the most similar to me, and has awakened his Sharingan. However, he didn't have a plan for Haku's attacks. The other genin trains hard, but is only average at best. The girl should be dead, or killed out of mercy before she actually has to go into a real fight. The Hokage looked at Kakashi to see his expression. He was surprised to see that Kakashi was merely slumping into his chair, not offering any defiance. What jutsu could they use? I saw them use no gen or ninjutsu. They know tree walking, but honestly have no other appreciable skills that I saw. Interesting, you are dismissed, Naruto. Remember that written report. Naruto was gone in an instant, no doubt moving along the rooftops to wherever he went. He turned back to Kakashi. The man looked tired, slumped in the chair, his hands gripping the armrests loosely. Kakashi, your team is? My team is bad. Permission to speak bluntly? Given. Of my current team, I don't know if I know what to do with any of them. One is average, bland. He has the commitment, but he's bland and has nothing special about him yet. He has the one technique, but it's difficult to master, and since the only other known practitioner is dead, I can't help him. One is an obsessed fangirl, and Naruto did get it right. She should probably not be a ninja unless she takes it more seriously. The other is the worst though. I thought Sasuke was the best of his class? All reports show that he has good skills in all areas. He is the most like Naruto. Only the differences are stark. Naruto is good, but he's not arrogant. He just has no idea how other people work. Sasuke is arrogant. He's good, but he's arrogant. Naruto can't work with a team because he has no idea about emotion. Sasuke simply refuses to believe anyone else is worth working with. They passed your test though. True, but I suspect Sasuke only went with it because he had to, and Sakura because she's a fangirl. She has potential, but I fear I'd need to brainwash her to unlock it. It gets worse. When Naruto arrived, I honestly preferred working with him. Despite his lack of knowledge of people and ruthless streak, he's a good ninja. A very good ninja. He will likely continue to surpass everyone his age. I wish I was his sensei and not that of my team. The Hokage stroked his beard. He had seen a lot of ninjas whom the pressure was getting to. He'd seen newly promoted Chunin break down because someone had died on their first or second mission. He'd seen Jonin who just stopped because of things they'd seen. He'd seen people who had lost loved ones. He had lost loved ones. And now he was seeing one of his elites break down over his team. One of his most fearless and brilliant shinobi struggling to cope with the challenge of his team. He'd had a team once, there'd been problems, but he'd managed. Mostly. They'd all become legends by the time one of them went off the rails beyond redemption. I could always transfer you off sensei duty. Move you to be Naruto's sensei permanently. He's currently without one, and will need training to advance. You could? I am the Hokage. Unless it bothers the civilians directly, I can do whatever I want. Shinobi matters are my job. But would you? No. You need to persevere here, Kakashi. If you really want to train Naruto, then arrange it yourself. However, I will not allow you to simply abandon your current team. Keep training them and train them better because currently it's not going well. Hi. Go home and sleep, Kakashi. You look like you need it. One last thing. Of course. There always seems to be. Do you think Naruto used one of my team as bait? Maybe. The thought definitely crossed his mind. Still though, I couldn't tell you for sure. Perhaps one of my TNI people could. If he did, it needs catching early. Kakashi nodded and made his way out slowly, book rising into his hands magically to cover what parts of his face could not be seen. Just before he left, he turned back one last time. Oh. Naruto might make a good addition to TNI now that you mention it. He got through the first two excuses. That's more than most people do. The door clicked behind him as he left. There were a few brief moments of silence where Hiruzen stared out of the window into the city. The rain had mostly stopped, and the clouds had broken just enough that the pale sliver of a moon shone through. He looked out as he heard the footsteps of his final appointment coming in. He didn't really hear them. He knew the person walking was too careful to make noise unnecessarily. There was a slight rustle as they took their seat. An interesting turn of events, Hirozen. It seems Team 7's mission to the wave ended up killing Gato as a side product. My sources suggest his criminal empire is crumbling in all the other elemental nations. Of course, my agents have moved to capitalize and have seized as much as they can. Naturally, this will work its way into Konoha in the usual way. Money into the hands of people, treasures as bribes and scrolls into obscure sections of the library? Of course. I still think it was one of my finest bits of work to use the library as a place to drop off captured jutsu scrolls and the like. No one ever thinks to wonder where they came from. They sat in silence. Hirozen reached for another wad of the rich tobacco. I hear you sent Naruto along to them as backup. He did well, I take it? Apparently. Kakashi was impressed, you know. But it's not all good. He doesn't get along with others, does he? Well, the full list of his interactions with the other genin lead to one of them nearly dying, and another of them trying to hurt him before he restrained her. She's lucky then. Lucky? Judging by her profile, and the report's details of her actions, it sounds like Naruto could very quickly have killed her if he had wanted to. In fact, his instinct would have been to. Like he did for Zabuza's associate. Like he did with Gato and his thugs. He made 2 direct kills in this mission, and performed actions that lead to a further 100 at least if our reports are accurate. Children his age should not do that. Most genin don't make their first full kills until they reach Chunin level where the stakes are raised. Naruto isn't a child. He's a shinobi. An assassin. He's human. He's a weapon. Even without the use of his asset, he's a weapon. Do not mention the asset. It is his curse. It is why I gave him to you, even if I forbade you from teaching him to use it. He could be more. Imagine it. He sneaks in and unleashes a sudden hell on his foes. Imagine any foe suddenly having him appear and go off like a million explosive tags. No. He will not be a bomb. The air was thick with the intent of both men. They looked each other in the eye for a long, long moment before it began to defuse. Danzo spoke first. I know. He's your soldier to command now. You admit he is good. Better than any of your common genin and most of your chunin. At what he does he is an A-rank ninja. But if he was caught, he's no better than a decent genin as a normal shinobi. He does what he does well. I suspect he'll keep doing so. There was a moment of silence. The Hokage paused for a moment and then clapped his hands together gently. You knew what was going to happen. How long? Since Gato got his first tendrils of power into Wave. What manipulations did you enact? A few subtle ones. My operatives might have seeded Tazuna with the idea of a bridge, and ensured that Gato didn't try to destroy it directly until Konoha Shinobi could make it there. From there, I knew Naruto could get in. Was Gato that much of a threat? He might have been rich, but Konoha could have squashed him with some ease had he got out of hand. He's a worm. A parasite. Eventually he would have gained enough money to catch the ears of the daimyo. Money buys influence. Eventually we would have found him holding a larger stake in our futures. Making us a target. Better to kill the parasite before it grows. Nip it in the bud, so to speak. Plus, if he ever came to dislike us, the consequences would be dire. We have enemies, Hirozen, hidden enemies who would see this village destroyed. Ironic that the root is strangling the flowers of that plant. Your mastery of the metaphorical is as sharp as ever. Your appreciation of the practical is as well. Still, did you really think Naruto would be the one to do what you needed? Did you really plan this from when Gato first entered the scene as a possible threat? Yes. One day I hope Naruto does the same. He has a gift for the subtle, even if he doesn't know its full extent yet. You see him as a successor? Leadership is in his blood. There was a thoughtful pause before both men looked out over the dark city. Chapter 9, Field Trip. Sometime later. The team shifted uncomfortably in the standard uniform for Konoha Shinobi. Although variations on the general outfit of dark blue body glove and green vest, most shinobi tended to abandon those after the first couple of years. After all, sometimes those flashy variations got people killed. Friends and teammates too. The standard didn't get you paid a lot of attention, and was thus better at keeping you alive. It was pretty well designed as well, useful pockets and padding in just the right places, honed by years of shinobi making clever adjustments and passing them around. Not that this team was used to the standard uniform. This was a team that spent most of its time in the tight, faceless gray of the torture and interrogation wing of the shinobi forces. They were the ones who loved the dark rooms and the indiscriminate noises. The surgical precision of their job. Which is why they didn't like the standard uniform. It wasn't right for interrogation, and the fatigues were stiff and unusual. Effective but not worn in, and altogether too colorful. This mission was a fairly critical one. That was why they were going out to interrogate outside Konoha, as opposed to in their dark chambers, where unimaginable horror could be threatened to open a subject up. A thinker, given enough time, can crack someone. Anyone. Being out in the sunlight, with a time limit? Much less welcoming. It needed a master. They snapped to attention as their master approached. Standing at an imposing height, face marked by twin scars, Ibiki Marino was intimidating. His face bore a stern expression that unsettled people, as if he was staring through them, into their soul. Popular rumor that the official sources never truly denied was that he could break a man just by looking at him. Right now, they were not looking because he was in a bad mood. There was no obvious tell, but the fact his fist had crumpled and destroyed the note he had been holding was a good indicator. Little shreds of paper blew out behind him like a comet trail as he walked towards them. One of them found a bit of courage. So, when are we going, boss? As soon as the other two charges show up. One I did not expect to be here on time, the other. The fist clenched a little tighter, and some last fragments of paper scattered on the breeze. There were a few moments of terrified silence before a small commotion from a nearby street. Here's charge number 1. The figure skidded around the corner, trench coat flapping as it turned. The figure bounced off a couple of civilians, then a wall. Then they skidded to a halt in front of Ibiki. Sorry, Scarface, there was a sale and I had to try and get another stick in. Really, Anko? Really? The figure tossed the stick which had previously been covered by the sweet treat over her shoulder carelessly. All right, let's go. You're not last to arrive, Anko, we have a special team member joining us. Oh, who is it? The figure opened his fist to try and read the note. The few crumpled remains yielded nothing for the master interrogator. Someone called Naruto. Apparently, he's a stealthy one. Is he cute? Is that all you think about? I can wonder. Ibiki sighed. If this Naruto was any later, he would break him when the mission was over. He turned towards the gate when there was a surprised yelp from the two guards. How did you get in here? He scattered the cards. Ibiki effortlessly tuned out the idiot guards and took in the figure that now stood in the gateway. His brain analyzed the figure and got very little. Loose black cloak that hid everything that wasn't black, a bulge at the back where weapons sat was all he could get. Oh well, you weren't a master interrogator if you didn't have some swagger. He walked up to the figure and towered over it. You're Naruto? Yes. You're late. I arrived at the gate 2 hours ago. You didn't reveal yourself to me until now. I wish to know more about my teammates. Lord Hokage tells me I should get to know people better. You do that by talking to them face to face, not by spying. I'm not good at that. PFFF. Why did he send you with me? I don't know. Despite the figure's appearance, Ibiki could just tell that wasn't entirely true. He decided to press. I think you do. Show me your face. No. Show me your head. The team of TNI interrogators watched the exchange with awe. Their common consensus was that this Naruto was going to suffer badly. And that he had balls of steel. Huge balls. I am your team leader. Do as I say. I believe I do not have to reveal personal secrets unless they are mission critical. Yes, but I can extract them. I have seen Kakashi's face. To his credit, Ibiki didn't react on the outside. Which is more than can be said for his colleagues. Internally, he was seething. He hadn't seen it, despite numerous efforts, and nearly kidnapping the man at one stage. How? I won't say. Ibiki decided he would crack him later. Right now, they had a mission. You know what our mission is? Yes. Your role? Infiltration and distraction whilst extraction is performed. Define extraction. Removal of target information or persons holding target information. Did you remember your headband like a good boy? No. Because the mission documents declared this mission sensitive and hence headbands were to be dispensed with. One of the Chunin spluttered slightly as he remembered what he had remembered to bring. Good, let's move. Try to keep up, shorty. I will Scarface. Anko burst out laughing, unable to hold it in anymore. Ibiki, I like this kid already. You are a kid, right? You can show the sexy Anko-chan your face if you want to. Naruto merely shrugged. Anko licked her lips. Even if he was a kid, he was interesting. Very interesting. She would enjoy this time immensely. The team halted as night began to fall. Traveling at night was possible, but somewhat discouraged. Bandits got more courageous at night, fueled by the extra cover of darkness and anything they'd been drinking. The Chunin in the team began to set a fire as Ibiki sat in meditation. Anko was off killing something, having been deprived of said pleasure during the day. From the undergrowth, there was an anguished squeal and the sound of a knife doing some work. Look what I found. They stared at the boar's carcass that she carried nonchalantly in both arms, cradling the surprisingly undamaged corpse in her arms. The only signs of injury were a couple of small marks in its neck, and the thin line across the throat. Naruto looked at the corpse and found himself warming to her a bit. The cut was clean, and aside from letting the pig make noise, she had killed it efficiently and without fuss. She didn't seem to mind the cold, or the blood that slightly stained her coat. The Chunin set about cooking the carcass. Anko wiped off the blood, and leapt up into the tree where Naruto was sheltering. He didn't turn, keeping himself hidden in the dark shadows. I wonder. What's under your hood? My face. Like anyone else. No need to be rude to Anko-chan. I would like to see your face. She licked her lips in an odd fashion, but then again, most people had odd habits. Do you need to? Well, no. But then I'll never know how cute you are. You've got the dark part down, but not the tall or handsome, as far as I know. Why do you want tall, dark and handsome? It's a saying. What does it mean? You don't know? What are you? A ghost. You are clearly not. Tell me then, Naruto. Who are you? Whilst she talked, she idly played with her hands. Using his Byakugan, Naruto could see the hand signs subtly woven in by the focusing of chakra. This allowed him to grab the snake that tried to bite him a moment later. I'm an assassin, I'm 12 years old, and I don't understand people. He tightened his grip on the snake until it poofed away in smoke. You meanie. He wasn't even venomous. He was only meant to distract you. Why? So I can take off your hood. Oh. Naruto prepared for the next jutsu, and suddenly found himself bound up in snakes. He didn't bother to resist. No struggling? No point, I can't break the hold. So, if this happened to you on a mission, you just let them kill you? Well, not exactly. But yes. She pulled back the hood and retracted the snakes. You are an odd one. Even by my books. Although, you do have the cute part down, perhaps handsome later. Even if you are too young for me. Naruto became acutely aware of how she was leaning towards him with her arms pressing her chest inwards. He found himself suddenly unable to look away from the pleasant sight it created. He had no idea why it was pleasant, but the shape was. No, it wasn't that, it was something else. Ooh, do you like that view, Darky-kun? Who is Darky-kun? You silly. It's a nickname. Something I call you because it's like you. Oh. Like a mission name or a code name. Yes, but it's more friendly. It's something that friends give each other. I don't have friends. Seriously, what are you? Why do people keep asking me that? Anko studied him carefully. He wasn't lying. The question was genuine, the confusion real. She realized suddenly that this was a boy who hadn't had a normal childhood. Someone who was in some ways just like her. Only she'd become an outcast once she'd been cursed. He was an outcast who had only just discovered other life existed. Her face softened slightly as she sat down on the tree branch opposite him. Naruto watched her body language change, although he didn't fully understand it. Tell me about your childhood, Naruto. I don't know if I'm allowed. Also, why did you stop with the nickname? Because we're alike. Well, a bit. You haven't had friends and you seem to be an outcast. I haven't been cast out of anything. Well, an outcast by choice then. He considered. The appraisal was correct. True. Then tell me what you can about your childhood. Did you have parents? Yes. They are essential to being born. I mean, did you know them? No. I spent my early years in an orphanage. Lord Hokage sometimes checked on me. You too, ha. I was an orphan too. I try not to remember those early years. The food was bad. Anko laughed. Some things never change. She saw his lips twitch from the flat line they had held for the entire time they had talked. What then, Darky-kun? Why am I Darky-kun again? Because we're becoming friends. We are? This is the start of friendship, I think. I'm not big on friends either. I have a problem that means people don't trust me. I don't trust people. She smiled again. Why not? They don't think. I've seen the Jin in teams my age, and they don't think right. Define right for me, Darky-kun. They don't make the logical choice for the mission. They seem to dislike courses of action that lead to harm. We're shinobi, we cause harm. Harm to whom though, Darky-kun? Anyone within the mission parameters who it becomes necessary to cause harm to. I'm an assassin, killing is my job. Can I pose a question for you? Yes. Right, you're on a mission. One of your teammates has got captured and you have a choice between rescuing them and completing the mission. Which do you choose? The mission. Even if it means they die? If the mission were to be compromised by saving them, then yes. It is likely not eliminating my target would lead to further deaths. Even if you had to watch them die. Yes. Listen to them plead for you to save them? Listen to them scream? Yes. Yes. His voice only faltered slightly. Really? Yes. I think. Depends on their relative worth. She was almost shocked by this. Almost. She knew that line of thought far too well. A certain sensei of hers had had a similar line of thought. Sacrifices made using cold logic. Except her old sensei had never cared about feelings and took joy from his malice. The boy before her seemed to be only using logic for his decisions. "I've found where your thinking differs, Darky-kun." "Where?" "It would be interesting to know. When people form friendships, teams grow stronger. Eventually, people may have to choose between their friends and the mission." "You've worked with Kakashi, right?" "Yes. He told me those who abandon the mission are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are lower than trash. You understand that more now? So, I might have to choose between saving a teammate or a friend or completing the mission. And choosing the mission may be harder because of the friendship?" "Yes. Other people think with their emotions, which can be good. It can drive people onwards." "What drives you to do your missions and get better?" Naruto thought. Then he crossed his legs and continued to think. He opened his eyes to find a hand waving in front of his face. "You in there, Darky-kun?" "I don't know. It's what I've always done." "Huh. I think you'll find out eventually." He didn't respond. She couldn't help but just observe the young man. He wasn't a boy, he definitely wasn't a child. He was mature beyond his years, and if what he said was true, he'd never had a childhood. He was a weapon, he saw himself as a weapon through and through. She felt a deep pang of pity for him, despite herself. He was content, even if he didn't know it. He was everything he wanted to be. She acted on impulse, hugged him. The fact they were sitting on the tree meant that his grabbing his shoulders and pulling them into her chest so his head rested on her shoulder meant the motion was quite sudden. Naruto quickly stowed the kunai that his slid into his palm when he realized this wasn't an attack. There was contact, but it was warm and odd. He found himself held close, his arms sticking out awkwardly as he didn't know what to do with them. The entire situation was odd. But it was nice in its way. Anko held him in the hug for a few seconds before sitting back. She realized she had a slight blush on her cheeks, mostly because of the look of confused bewilderment on his face. Then she saw the kunai. "Really? You had to stop yourself stabbing me?" Naruto's brain fought for coherence as it processed the hug. "Yes." "What was that?" "That was a hug. They're what friends give each other when they feel that person needs cheering up. I think. As I said, I'm not big on friends either." "Oh. It felt nice. I don't understand it though." She laughed a loud and open laugh. Naruto looked down into the camp and realized that the three Chunin, who were busy cooking something in a large pot, were staring up at the scene. He read their lips as they whispered to one another. Did Anko, the one who? Naruto didn't fully understand the next few words. He was sure he misread them because the words like kunai, handcuffs and appendix didn't belong in the same sentence as far as he knew, but kept reading. Just hugged Naruto. Hugged. What kind of genjutsu does he know to make her do that willingly? He decided to give them a moment before he called down to them. The only genjutsu I know are to distract and disable opponents, or to hide myself. I don't know any people controlling ones. The TNI specialists decided it was best not to stare, and shut up very quickly. Anko smiled. We're going to get on just fine, Darky-kun. Who's your sensei? I don't really have an official one. I think I'm going to seek training from people who could improve my skills. I'd like to know more assassination-style jutsu and techniques. Do you know about poison? Only a little. Do you know someone who can help? She flashed him a smile and stood into an elaborate pose. Darky-kun, the amazing and sexy Anko will become your awesome Anko-sensei. Naruto didn't understand why it had to be so flashy, but hey, he had a new sensei, who had just nearly overbalanced and sat down quickly. Ibiki had been quietly ignoring the conversation the whole time whilst he was meditating. The last outburst had broken his concentration just a little too much. Enough, Anko. You get the second watch tonight. She groaned. The second watch was the worst. First watch and third watch your sleep came in one burst. Second, you got 2 lousy, unsatisfactory sleep periods. With the food prepared, the teen went to sleep quickly. Naruto stayed sentinel in his tree, eyelids shut, but the Byakugan constantly searching. He left out a breath as he mulled the events of the day over. Friends, are they important? That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.